The governor professes to be unconcerned about the state of his campaign, but you can be sure that his campaign strategists are very concerned, and that is why they are starting to attack Marco Rubio, who they have largely ignored up to this point. The former House Speaker joins us live in our studios this morning. Great to have you come in. Thanks.
Glad to be back.
All right, Marco, let me ask you, the mantra of your campaign, implicitly by you, but certainly explicitly by a lot of other people, is that you are the real Republican in this race, and that seems to say that Charlie Crist is not. Are you the real Republican, and what does that mean?
Well, Michael, I think it's deeper than that. I think it has to do with the moment our country's in. Our country has to make a decision about what it wants government to be like. And more importantly, do we want to be like the rest of the world, where government is deeply involved in our economic lives, or do we want to continue to be an exceptional society, a nation of limited government, which has made us, Americans, the most prosperous and the freest people in human history? That's the debate that's happening in America today.
But that's certainly the larger debate.
Yeah, it is, but I'm running for U.S. Senate because I want to be a voice on behalf of limited government. I want to be a voice on behalf of those who believe that America should remain exceptional and not become like the rest of the world. It's the voice I think the Republican Party should be. For Republicans, that's the debate. Whether Republicans should be a voice for that, or should we become more like the Democrats? And in this race, I believe that I am the only candidate in the Republican primary, quite frankly in the race, who you can count on, or folks can count on, to go to Washington, D.C. and be an effective and consistent voice on behalf of limited government.
You know, I went to Coral Springs a couple of weeks ago just to hear you out on the stop. It's one of dozens of stops you have made across the state. And you talked in that speech to about 125 Republican businessmen and women about American exceptionalism, which is what you were referring to. And you seem to say that we are, the United States, under the current administration and the current Congress, are evolving into some kind of form of government like what? Western Europe, yeah. France, Germany, Spain, the Scandinavian countries?
I think more like the rest of the world. Certainly more like these industrialized nations. These are not poor countries. These are not bad places. They seem happy enough, but they're not the United States. They're not a place. This is a country, really what sets us apart is not the number of rich people we have. Every country has rich people. What sets America apart is that this is perhaps the only economy in the world where you can go out and open a business in the spare bedroom of your home. And I don't want to lose that. I think most Americans don't want to lose that, but we will lose that if we go down the road of more government involvement in our economy, and if we continue to spend money we don't have, which is the major issue confronting our nation's economy right now.
In that speech in Coral Springs, you sort of laid out your conservative bona fides, and it was limited government and no new taxes. On the subject of no new taxes, you say in your website, quote, "I have never voted for a tax increase, but the St. Pete Times on their PolitiFact website examined your voting record over the last 9 years in the State House and as a member of the West Miami City Commission." And here's what they said, quote, "As a city commissioner, Rubio voted twice to raise property taxes, and in the Florida House, while he pushed to cut property taxes collected by local governments, he also repeatedly voted to force school districts statewide to collect more property taxes." Right. So they are saying, the St. Pete Times seems to say, you say you are against tax increases, but you voted for them.
Well, that's funny. First of all, when I was the Speaker of the House and even the legislator, they never accused me of raising taxes. On the contrary, they criticized me for refusing to find new sources of revenue. Second of all, PolitiFact has it wrong. They go on and say in the same article that I've never voted. They acknowledge that we never voted to raise the tax rate, and in fact, in 7 out of the 8 years, voted to cut the tax rate. Just because a tax generates more revenue doesn't make it a tax increase. There are times where you lower the tax rate. This is highly technical, but this is a technical audience, they'll understand it. We actually lowered the tax rate. It was the increases in property values that led to more money being collected. You can't say that just because a tax collects more money, it's a tax increase, especially if you're cutting the rate. Look at the capital gains tax. In America, every time it's been cut, it's led to more revenue. Right. Look at the sales tax. We didn't raise the sales tax in Florida. It was 6%, and yet year after year, for many years, it increased the amount of revenue it took in. And let's not forget that in almost all of those years, the governor of the state of Florida was Jeb Bush. I think he'd be shocked to learn that his budgets raised taxes. They didn't.
I don't think they did either. On the subject of Jeb Bush, since you have mentioned the former governor, he has so far stayed out of this race, but I understand you're going to have a fundraiser in, what, a week or so, and I'm told former Governor Bush is going to show up at that fundraiser.
Well, it's not with him. I mean, he's welcome to come to any event we do, but it's with his son, friends, George P. and Jeb Jr., and they've done a great job and continue to work for us, and we're excited about their help and what it means for our campaign.
All right, well, let's talk about another. I'm asking you to define what conservatism is to you, since I think that the success of your campaign, as far as I can tell, is that you are campaigning among Republican conservatives who either feel Charlie Crist has abandoned them or the party has abandoned them. What about gun control? Because Marion Hammer, the head of the NRA in Florida, says you're a suspect on the Second Amendment.
Well, I have to disagree with her statement on that. I've never voted against the Second Amendment bill in my entire career. In fact, I've supported their agenda 100% of the time. The bill that she was disappointed about, I'm the speaker that got it passed. None of the previous speakers could ever get that bill passed for them. And ironic.
Which bill are you talking about?
There was a bill that involved the right to take your gun to work and leave it in the car in the parking lot. Very controversial. Right. They've tried for multiple years to get it passed. It was under our speakership that it passed. And here's the ironic thing about it, Michael. Charlie Crist didn't know whether he was going to sign it or not, because he talked about there was these competing interests between property rights and the right to bear arms. And then to top it all off, just 6 months ago, he appointed an anti-Second Amendment judge to the state Supreme Court. So I find it a bit ironic. Obviously, Marion is someone I respect. She has the right to endorse and support whomever she wants. But my record should not be distorted. I have 100% support of the Second Amendment throughout my career in public service.
All right, let's ask about another major issue, and that is immigration and immigration reform. Now, in the remarks I heard you make on the stump, you said, well, first of all, let me back up. You know that most conservatives do not favor, well, a lot of them would say, let's find a way to get rid of the estimated 12 million people who are in this country illegally. And I heard you say, look, that's just not realistic. We are not going to do that. And you spoke essentially with some sympathy for people who are here illegally but not breaking the law, working, supporting their families. Would you find a way to give them some kind of path to legal residency or citizenship?
My goal is for us to have a legal system that works. And unfortunately, if you create a path where people can enter this country illegally, and then find a way to stay here, and then find a way to find legalization once they're here, you're creating an incentive for people to enter this country illegally. And you're creating a disincentive for people to come into this country through the legal process. So I think amnesty will take away the opportunity we will ever have to have a legal system that works. I am a huge fan of legal immigration. I just don't believe that we can create a legal immigration system in America that works until we deal with the issue of illegal immigration. That includes border security and enforcing the laws that we have.
What about the McCain-Kennedy bill that was considered for a while in Congress? It had enforcing the borders more securely, but on the other hand, it found a way to provide some way for people to pay a fine, maybe even go back home, re-enter the country.
And I know that, and listen, it's not easy. I always tell people, you know, when you talk about 12, 13 million human beings, there are going to be some very sad stories associated with it. But the bottom line is, if you pass a law in this country, like the McCain law would have done, that creates a path to legalization for people who knowingly entered this country, knowingly knew they were breaking the law, you're creating an incentive for people to do that in the future. And you're creating an enormous disincentive for people to enter the country legally. And I think if you were to create that sort of path to citizenship for folks who entered this country illegally, you will destroy any chance you have of having a legal system that works.
All right, let's take a break for a minute, and we'll come back. Many more questions to ask you. Always enjoy speaking with Marco Rubio, so stay with us. We'll be back with more for Mr. Rubio in just a minute.